Hi everyone. If you want to learn about the different stages of fundraising, so this is going to be the video for you. Essentially, you may have heard of a lot of jargons, right? Jैसे pre-series A, series A, series B, series C, pre-seed, seed. What exactly does this mean? आखिरकार ये सब होता क्या है? So essentially, इस वीडियो में I'm going to be running through what each and every of these stages signify, what kind of capital is typically raised in these kind of rounds, so you get a broad idea कि how much funds that you can raise at each and every stage of your startup. And more often than not, it is determined by revenues unless there is some exceptional circumstances जो बहुत ही unreal circumstances होते हैं which is not applicable for everyone. So more and more mota moti this is going to be the broad criteria which is going to be applicable for 99% of the startups, excluding a few exceptions out there, right? So I just want to kind of disclose what the exceptions are going to be. Exception would be like companies like Cred, which raised $35 million right off the bat. That is a one major exception. Another exception is Krutrim, which got like $100 million right from the beginning itself, right? So आपको लगता हो कि इन कंपनीज को इतना पैसा क्यों मिला है? But in all honesty, I have a feeling, I don't know for a fact yet, but there's a high possibility that the founders themselves may have put in a huge sum of their own money upfront, which was then kind of added on top by the other VCs as well. And since they are already proven entrepreneurs, Kunal Shah, Bhavish Agarwal, they're already established entrepreneurs, it's easy for them to raise funding. So that is why it becomes even more easier for them to not only invest their own money but also raise VC capital. So that those are some of the major exceptions which I can think of at this stage. But more or less जो जिन startups की मैं बात करूंगा, जिसमें startup stages की बात करूंगा, it's going to be applicable for most startups out there. So if you want to keep continue to learn more about startups, fundraising, and how to grow your startup, subscribe to my channel, click the bell notification so you get subscribed of all the notifications that you'll get of all my videos going forward. So starting from the earliest stage, right? The earliest stage is supposedly considered the pre-seed or the seed stage. Now, pre-seed or the seed stage may what you'll generally tend to realize is you won't find too many institutional investors in that space. There is one player called Antler, which operates at a very, very, very early stage. They directly invest in founders, but the kind of founders that they invest in, they have at least a decade of industry experience with a very core space, with a very core specialization in a specific sector, and they support them at that level to kind of build the product from scratch. But it doesn't really apply to most of the startups out there. It's for a very niche category of founders for whom this program is made. But the pre-seed overall as an avenue for investment is mostly reserved for friends, families, and angels. So if you're starting an early stage business, right, you need to initially bootstrap it yourself, put your own money. अपना खुद का पैसा आपको लगाना पड़ेगा. अगर आप एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हो कि आप अपना एक भी पैसा नहीं लगाओगे और इन्वेस्टर्स उसमें पैसा लगाएंगे एंड दैट you'll use that money to grow your business, it's not going to work that way. You need to put your own money. You need to raise money from your friends, from your families, your local angels you're in touch with. Raise money from them. This could be the first 25 to 50 lakhs which are required even to build the MVP. So at that stage you need to take the funding from them, because unless you raise money from your own closest friends and families, why would an outside investor who does not even know you, why would he trust you? जस्ट कॉमन सेंस, राइट? अगर कोई स्ट्रेंजर आपके पास आके बोलता है कि मेरे को आप 5 लाख, 10 लाख, 20 लाख रुपए दीजिए, मैं मुझे अपना स्टार्टअप ग्रो करना है, आप उस पर क्यों ट्रस्ट करोगे? अगर आप खुद ने आपने अपने खुद के पैसे नहीं लगाए हैं, आपका खुद का स्किन इन द गेम नहीं है, आपके फ्रेंड्स फैमिली से अगर किसने इन्वेस्ट नहीं करा है, अगर जो आपके क्लोजेस्ट है वही अगर आप पे ट्रस्ट नहीं कर रहे हैं, तो बाहर के इन्वेस्टर आप पे ट्रस्ट क्यों करेंगे? It's pretty common sense, right? So that is why at the pre-seed stage, it's extremely vital to get to bootstrap it. Get the initial capital from your friends, families. This could be somewhere in the range of 25 to 50 lakhs just to get the MVP going and get your initial kind of testing customers going, so that you reach a certain stage where you can then reach to the more established seed stage players who can then kind of invest with you. The next stage is typically the seed stage. अभी seed stage में it's not a very generic term, it's a very broad term, and the typical fundraising ticket sizes over here range from 150,000 जो मोटा मोटी 1 करोड़ रुपए हो गए, from 1 crore, from $100,000 all the way to $500,000, which is approximately 4 CR. So 1 CR से 4 CR का ये जो bracket होता है, that is called the seed stage. At this stage you can expect to get some sort of institutional investors, but they are smaller stage institutional investors, right? So you'll have players like Titan Capital, 100x.vc, and a lot of separate angel networks are there, like Venture Catalyst, Marwadi Angels, etc., etc., Jito Angel Network. They typically work at this stage, and they normally prefer companies who have some form of traction. आपके पास minimum एक छोटा amount of traction चाहिए before you reach out to these guys. If you're reaching out to these guys on a pure product level with no traction, it's going to be extremely difficult to raise capital, because you at this stage, with the initial money that you deployed, definitely you can raise some traction, and you need to be extremely frugal, and you need to be very shrewd in terms of how you're generating revenues. So agar at this stage you don't have at least like 25 50 lakhs 1 crore ka revenue at this place, it's going to be very difficult to raise capital for the next round. So ensure that you have that basic capital in place, so that you can then go to these investors and then raise funds. And a lot of people think that the current funding winter is going on, and that's true to an extent, but in reality, that's only true for the larger stages, right? Series C and D. I recently had discussions from Bipin from Titan Capital, with even Shashank from 100x, and they told me that at the seed stage level, there's literally no issues in terms of fundraising, right? Hundreds of startups are getting fundraised every year at the pre-seed and the seed stage. So for early stage companies, there's still no reason to despair. You still have funding opportunities. You just need to show results. You just need to show that your product has receptivity in the market. If you can do that, you'll definitely be able to raise capital. So this is the seed stage, right? Now let's move on to the next stage, which is called the pre-series A kind of stage. So a lot of companies, before they reach the series A stage, they need a kind of funding in the middle before they reach that stage, and this is typically in the size of $1 to $2 million. Now you can call it a pre-series A round, or you can call it a bridge round. Nomenclatures might change, but mota moti इस round का size होता है $1 to $2 million, which is 8 to 15 cr roughly. At this stage, you already need to have a product in place. You already need to have sustainable revenues in place. Generally, most investors at this stage, they would expect you to have at least 3 to 5 cr of revenue, ARR, annual revenue in place before you raise this kind of funding, because if you're looking to raise this kind of money, you need to show that there's a strong product market fit already. Product market fit agar nahi hai, it's very difficult to raise this kind of money unless you are an established pedigreed entrepreneur जो 10-15 साल का इंडस्ट्री एक्सपीरियंस लेके आया हुआ है. If you don't have that experience, it's extremely difficult to raise the rounds like this and going forward. So if you want to get to in order to get to this stage, you need to have revenues in place. Without revenues, looking to raise an amount like 8 to 15 cr is practically impossible in the current times. Because think about it this way, right? Startup fundraising, it's not like I have a company and just invest it. It's a competitive endeavor. थिंक अबाउट IIT JEE और सिविल सर्विसेज एग्जाम्स, राइट? वो कितने competitive होते हैं. This is even more competitive than that, because you're competing with some of the best entrepreneurs across country. You're competing with them, and investors have to choose which startup to invest in. So when the investors want to invest in a specific company, वो इस तरीके से देखते हैं कि ये जो founder है, is he going to be a category leader in that space? That is the thought process which goes in terms of investing in a startup. So that's why it is extremely competitive, and if at this stage you cannot show revenues in your company, and or if you cannot show good enough revenues within your company, it's going to be extremely difficult. Now of course there are exceptions for extremely deep tech companies or very specific tech companies, or those kind of companies. There are always going to be exceptions like those, but for most companies which are there in today's day and age, the general tech startups that we see, or even accepting medical device companies which take 5 to 10 cr just to build the product, right? If you exclude that, most regular online tech companies, you need to have traction of at least 3 to 5 cr at this stage to be able to raise 5 to 10 cr of capital for your bridge round. So this is the pre-series A round, and this is essentially considered the gateway to proper institutional VCs. So before you get into the actual VC funding discussion, prior to this, most of these were seed stage VCs, and they would invest smaller checks. But the proper institutional VCs, the high ticket VCs, they generally start from this stage, and this is where the conversations change, and this is when you seriously start to enter the big league. So this is like the you could say this is like the bridge to from a small startup to a proper medium level startup, which is a serious company which can seriously go into something big. So that is why this stage is extremely vital. So ये स्टेज हो गया, इसके बाद आएगा आपका सीरीज ए, which is typically from $5 to $10 million of fundraise. This is where you'll have the big name VCs kind of coming in, people like Axel, like Matrix Partners, Sequoia has Surge, a lot of these players who start coming in at this stage. Primarily, these are the Series A investors. Uh, at this stage, you definitely need to have a lot of revenue in place. Most of these companies, they won't even look at you if your revenues are less than 5 to 10 CR per year. So, in order to kind of reach that stage, you need to have those kind of revenues in place. You need to have that kind of traction in place. You need to have that kind of market validation proof of concept already in place. Now, even though you might be gross negative, that's absolutely fine. No one expects a startup to be profitable at this stage, but you need to be at least gross profitable. And so that, what that means is, the revenues should be more than your gross variable expenses or the cost of goods sold. That is a bare minimum criteria at this stage, that you need to raise capital. Now, back in 2021, and even earlier in 2016, 2015, startups used to get funded left, right, and center, because that time it used to be quite easy. But in today's day and age, when most VCs they want to build a good, sustainable, growing business, at the same time ensure the basic financial metrics are taken care of. You need to have gross profitability by the stage where your cost of goods sold is less than the actual revenues which you're generating. And the reason why that is important is, if your cost of goods sold is less than your actual revenues, right, what that means is your fixed expenses, they might be slightly higher right now, but as soon as your revenues grow, eventually your fixed expenses won't grow beyond a certain point. But the variable expenses, even though they are growing, your margins between the revenue and the gross profits and the cost of goods sold, my bad, that keeps on increasing, and that will eventually surpass your fixed expenses, and you will start getting profitable. And this is the journey from being a loss making startup to a profit making startup, that you increase the volumes so much that your gross profit then starts to overcome your fixed expenses, and then you turn profitable. That is why this is extremely vital, and this is what is required at a Series A stage company. And these are typically considered growth stage companies, where you typically push on the accelerator and you look at 3x 5x growth in a year, do very aggressive growth, very aggressive. If you're in a B2B stage, you do a lot of cold prospecting, very aggressive cold prospecting. If you're in a B2C stage, you spend aggressively on ads to get as many more customers as possible. This is essentially the critical juncture of that stage where you do that. And this is also the stage where you implement your first line of management, right? So as founders, it is extremely important to gradually transition from being from an operator driven business, to then a leader driven business. And if you hire your first level of management who then takes care of day-to-day operations, because going forward, you'll be focusing more on the strategic part of your business, on the fundraising elements of your business, and ensuring that the overall policies and the practices which are in place in the company, in setting those up. This is this stage where this is the stage where that journey starts. We are setting up those systems in place, and this only refines further in the subsequent stages. So this was the typical Series A stage, and how the fundraising goes. The next stage is the Series B stage. A lot of people will have a bridge round in the middle of $2 to $5 million, just to kind of ensure that they don't dilute too much before they reach the Series B. A lot of companies do that, but by and large, the sequence goes from Series A, they move to Series B. A Series B round would be typically from $10 to $20 million. That is in INR terms, that would be like 80 to 150 CR. This stage typically, you need to have obviously very good revenues. 25 to 50 CR ka revenues is like a bare minimum criteria at this stage. A lot of companies, they tend to be obviously a gross profitable, but many companies also become net profitable by this stage, because especially in B2B companies, when you don't have the aggressive ad spends, right, it's very easy to become gross profitable at this stage. So that also becomes a very strong value prop at this very strong um, defining factor at this stage, that you start to minimize your losses and start focusing more on the gross profitability of your business. Your revenues are going up and your market is still expanding. At this stage, at least 2 to 3x growth year on year is still like a bare expectation of all VCs. This is the typical stage where slightly more bigger VCs start coming in, like Lightspeed Partners, like Sequoia. These kind of VCs start coming in at this stage, and they start to then look at and they'll at established companies which are going to be category leaders going forward, right? That's where this becomes extremely important. So getting that thing is right is extremely vital. And this is the stage where you have, in terms of startup, not just the revenues, you have a good second line of management in place, your CMOs, your CFOs, your CHROs. These guys are in place. You have established processes, established systems in place, because you cannot wing it anymore. This is not the early stages, these are serious stages, and without those processes, without those systems in place, it's absolutely impossible to scale further. Excuse me. So that is why this stage becomes extremely vital, where you get these things sorted, you have a logical system in place, you have a structured system in place, and your entire company is operating like a very well oiled machine. It's going round and round very quickly, and it's scaling very quickly. So this becomes extremely important, and the founder, he becomes more and more on the 30,000 feet level rather than on the day-to-day operations level. You're typically working at large strategic partnerships. You're looking at international expansions to grow your company at this stage. You're directly interfacing with bigger VCs, with next level funds to kind of get them for the next round of funding. And that is where, even we as World Trade Center Pune, that's where we come in as well. We help companies typically at Series A, Series B stage, to help them with international expansion, with international distribution, and kind of give the hockey stick growth which most companies require at this stage. So that's where that becomes extremely vital, and you need to have the systems and process in place. I cannot stress this enough. Most companies, they don't have systems and process in place, and that's why they struggle. So getting those things in order is extremely vital at this stage. So after Series B, it pretty much becomes very in terms of very obvious. The next round is Series C, which would be typically from 50 million to 100 million dollars. You have much now. You not only have like a second line of management, you have a third line of management in place as well. The third line of management will be directors of sales, directors of marketing, directors of finance. They'll take care of operations, better systems in place, better revenues. 100 CR is like a bare minimum revenue at this stage, which is expected. 100 to 150 CR, that's like the ballpark. Many companies at this stage, they already start becoming gross profitable. In fact, it kind of becomes like an expectation that you start becoming net profitable as well. And now you're talking with serious level, VCs like the soft banks, the Tiger Globals of the world, who would put in like 150, 200 CR into the company, right? And even many international funds like Gaza Capital and these kind of companies who kind of come at this stage. So these are more or less the kind of stages of your startup journey. The initial transition involves a lot of challenges in terms of product market fit. In the initial days that you're spending, you're focusing more on the product market fit side. Once the product market fit is kind of taken care of, then you have different challenges, which is more of the proof of concept side, where you have to show that customers are willing to pay for your solution. So each and every stage you could think about it not just in terms of revenues, but also in terms of the transition which are required, right? Because your company needs to transition accordingly. Initially it's primarily founder led, founder oriented, founder driven, everything. Gradually you shift that into process driven, system driven, and because only process and systems can scale, right? A founder driven company and individual driven company cannot scale beyond a certain point. You need to have systems, you need to have processes, you need to have second tier management, so that when the founder is out of the day-to-day operations, the company is still growing. That critical transition, which typically happens at pre-series A, series A levels, that is extremely vital to ensure that the company is growing and is capable of growing to heights, at series B, C, and D levels, where essentially it becomes a moot point, and you're already become an extremely successful entrepreneur, and and you personally made a huge amount of personal wealth for yourself as well. So this is how the typical transition stage goes. I hope you like this video. If you want to keep on subscribing and get more information about startup fundraising and growth, keep subscribe to my channel. For Click on the bell notification so that you get subscribed of each and every video I post in the future. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment below. And if you need my help to grow your business, whether it's in terms of actual growth, sales and marketing growth, or in terms of fundraising, let me know. We'll be happy to help you out. You can reach me in the comments below, and I will reach out to you in terms of how we can figure out and how we can work together. So hope you had a great video. Take care.